We all like to play our favorite childhood movie whenever we're feeling down. But were they really as harmless and innocent as we remember them to be? Some mask terrible backgrounds, while others take a dark turn.
It is criminal.
From a pro-Hitler Disney character to a popular cartoon character signing a slavery clause,
Leave her alone!
we're about to unveil the dark truths that will shatter your innocence. Buckle up, because the enchanting tales you thought you knew are about to take a spine-chilling twist into the mysterious unknown. Donald Duck. Donald Duck made his first appearance in the year 1934, a year after the German tyrant Hitler came into power. You're probably wondering why we're talking about this. Some fans theorize Donald Duck served in the war and was probably supporting the Germans. They say this because his sailor uniform bears resemblance to the German uniform, and even say his nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, are named after popular Nazi leaders. It doesn't help that there's a short war propaganda film that confirms the timeline. Fans think Donald Duck eventually left the party, or simply covered up his past. His nervous behavior, tendency to quack when stressed, fear of authority, and short temper all point toward PTSD, a common condition in many war veterans. Do you believe this? Scooby-Doo! Scooby-Dooby-Doo! Where are you? Well, believe it or not, fans think the Mystery Incorporated and the lovable Great Dane are stuck in purgatory. You might have noticed the gang doesn't age. According to fans, this is because they're the real ghosts, but are in denial. The gang met by some chance after passing away and embarked on wild adventures to prove ghosts don't exist. This is why every ghost they unmask is just a human in a costume, or equipped with fancy gadgets. Fans believe the gang is hell-bent on disproving ghosts because they're spirits themselves and are in denial, which keeps them from moving on to the afterlife. So they're forever stuck as spirits on Earth. The Simpsons. We all know why The Simpsons are here. A conspiracy theory suggests the creators of the show are time travelers who are warning the world using the cartoon. And there have been way too many moments for this to not be suspicious. Like the episode that predicted Disney would buy out 20th Century Fox, or the time it predicted Donald Trump's presidency, and matched some moments, and how it ended, down to the dress of the vice president. Oh, but there's more. In one episode, Homer is working on an equation which looks like just a jumble of numbers and symbols, but is unusually close to the equation that led to the confirmed mass of the Higgs boson. What do you think? Time travelers or just wild coincidences? Lion King. Let's fast forward to when Scar becomes the king. During Scar's reign, the land becomes dry and bare due to a lack of rain. Well, we all thought this was because of Scar, since he's not the rightful king. But one eagle-eyed fan realized it's actually Simba's fault. The clouds at Pride Rock follow the rightful king, so they start following Simba, the rightful heir to the throne after Mufasa's demise. Of course, Simba doesn't return to Pride Rock and instead spends his time in the rainforest, which gets all the rain, because he's there. The minute he returns to the Pride, it begins raining. This doesn't mean Scar isn't evil, but proves it wasn't Scar taking power that prompted the drought, but Simba abandoning the Pride. Mulan. Mulan was a movie ahead of its time because it promoted women's empowerment and questioned societal norms. But did you know Mulan's original tale has a dark end? The 1965 version, Su Tang Romance, begins like Disney's. Mulan disguises herself as a man, volunteering in place of her father to fight the war. Like the Disney version, she ends up saving the Khan's life. However, her army is defeated, and she's captured by the enemy. After a long, turn, and depressing imprisonment, Mulan returns home, only to find her father has passed away and her mother already remarried. The Khan, realizing Mulan's identity, plans on making her his mistress. When she finds out, she visits her father's grave, where she ends her life to escape her tragic fate. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Get your tissues ready because this theory will make you cry. In the show, imaginary friends become physically real, so it's possible Frankie is an imaginary friend too, but one conjured by the homeowner, Madame Foster. The reason? Madame Foster is exhausted and old, so taking care of the kids is impossibly hard for her. She laments on her lost days and imagines someone who can help her. Only she doesn't imagine someone random, but when she was younger. If you look closely, Madame Foster and her granddaughter Frankie wear almost the same clothes, but in their own way. It's also why Frankie's parents are never mentioned, because Frankie is Madame Foster. SpongeBob. Sure, it's a fictional show, but you have to admit, SpongeBob had the weirdest oddballs, and one fan suggested it's all because of nuclear testing. According to the fan, the fictional Bikini Bottom is directly under Bikini Atoll, a real-life island on the Marshall Islands. If you didn't know, the US government conducted nuclear tests on this island between 1946 and 1958, and the island has since suffered from radioactive contamination. SpongeBob was created in 1999. A time when radioactive effects would still be strong. So all the weird characters in SpongeBob are so because they've been affected by the radiation, which explains the talking squirrel under the sea, a smart plankton with access to modern tools, and other unique features. Mrs. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire, a fun childhood classic. But as we grow up, it's clear this movie was seriously misaligned with moral values. First off, we see a man, Daniel, whose careless antics causes his wife, Miranda, to leave him. After the court ruled against him, he should have straightened up, but instead, he disguises himself as a false nanny, essentially breaking his visitation pattern. To make it worse, he consistently sabotages Miranda's relationship and even attempts to take her possibly pepper-allergic boyfriend's life by adding pepper to his food. Although it's easily skipped over, Mrs. Doubtfire is a pretty problematic movie. Home Alone. Is it really Christmas if you're not binge-watching the Home Alone series? As loved as it is, there are some pretty dark theories about Home Alone, and one of them is related to the mafia, or an illegal gang. As a kid, it was always wonderful to see the big house the McAllisters owned, but as an adult, all I could think is, how can they afford this? Well, some fans believe the McAllisters were good buddies with the mafia, or some illegal high-net-worth gang. This would explain their mansion-like house, the trip to Paris right before Christmas, and even leaving the lights on. Either they were millionaires or had some serious connections. Another theory about this movie focuses on the protagonist, Kevin. The lovable genius who outsmarted his robber opponents by using some tricks in physics is loved by all. It's also undeniable that most of Kevin's tricks were not so safe for life, like these moments. This prompted a dark theory that Kevin is actually Jigsaw from Saw, or at least him as a child. Just think about it. But Jigsaw and Kevin devised dark traps to maim their opponent. Both have a strained relationship with their fathers, who allows their kid to get lost twice. And both lived in America. Fans believe Kevin grew into a sadistic character because of the way he was treated as a child. What do you think? Cinderella. Of course, Disney's Cinderella is a family-friendly version of a much darker story by the Grimm brothers. In the original tale, Ashen Patel, everything goes to plan, except Cinderella's father is alive. Let's fast forward to when the prince reaches Cinderella's house in search of the real glass slipper owner. In an attempt to fit in the shoe, both sisters cut off their toes, but the prince finds out. Eventually, Cinderella appears, and of course, the slipper fits. She and the prince get married, but not before disgracing the family. On their marriage, Cinderella's stepsisters try to gain the prince's favor, but Cinderella refuses to tolerate them and sends a flock of doves to poke the sisters' eyes, blinding them forever. Well, rightly served. The Brave Little Toaster. This movie was a roller coaster, to say the least. As a kid, it introduced us to the meaning of friendship and loyalty. But was that its only meaning? One fan theorized the characters were patients of a mental hospital and was struggling to fit in with society. Accordingly, the toaster had extreme claustrophobia. The lamp was struggling with rage and aggression. Blanky had extreme codependency. Radio was bipolar, the vacuum had OCD, and the AC unit was violent.
Hey, fellas, we can stay in here. Look.
If you rewatch the movie, you can spot signs of this theory, from the appliance's behaviors and dialogues to even their nightmares. While it had a happy ending, it's clear that by the end, the appliances realized the world had moved on without them, a harsh reality of life. Snow White.
Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
In this nostalgic story, the jealous queen sends huntsmen after Snow White, who's saved by the 7 dwarfs. The queen then makes several attempts to take her life, succeeding with the poisoned apple.
Now take the apple and make a wish. Wish grow cold.
But there was no true love's kiss, and the ending was unexpectedly intense. Snow White is based on a German tale written by brothers Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. In the original, the prince stumbles upon Snow White's coffin. Captivated by her, he decides to take her body with him. But the movement accidentally dislodges the poisoned apple from her throat, waking her up. Shortly, they get married. The queen doesn't know Snow White is alive, but recognizes her at the wedding. Angered, she tries to take her life once again.
I shall destroy your happiness if it is the last thing I do.
But is captured and ordered to dance barefoot on hot coals. Little Mermaid. Let's revise the Disney version. After rescuing and falling for the prince,
He's breathing. He's so beautiful.
Ariel makes a deal with the Sea Witch, signing away her voice in exchange for legs. She must make the prince fall in love with her. But here things take a turn. The Little Mermaid is based on a story written by a Danish author, Hans Christian Andersen, and the original story isn't as happy as you think. In Hans's version, the mermaid turned human will turn into sea foam if she can't charm the prince. Sadly, the prince falls for someone else. Upon Ariel's failure, the witch offers a new deal. If she takes the prince's life, she can go back to being a mermaid. But Ariel can't do it and submits to her fate, turning into sea foam. Aladdin. Remember the scene when Aladdin wished for this?
Can you make me a prince? Let's see.
Well, one clever fan has pointed out an interesting theory. According to the fan, Aladdin's first wish was to make him a prince, which meant he wouldn't magically transform into one and sprout a king father. But he'd eventually end up becoming one. So the genie gives him riches, takes him and Princess Jasmine on romantic adventures, and purposely allows Jafar to steal a lamp so Aladdin can save them all, prompting the Sultan to change the law and allow a commoner to marry Jasmine.
It's that law that's the problem. From this day forth, the princess shall marry whoever she deems worthy.
And Aladdin becomes the Prince of Agbar. So the entire movie isn't just a random turn of magical events, but a fulfillment of Aladdin's wish. How cool is that? Emperor's New Groove.
Ha! Boom, baby!
This was one of my favorite movies. It had everything: the story, the animation, the character arc, and not to mention the sass. But one observant fan pointed out an interesting little detail. Remember after Cuzco turns into a llama?
What? A llama?
And is walking in the forest? We see a fly say, "Help me," before it is eaten by a spider? What? According to the fan, only people who have been transformed by some curse or spell can talk as animals, as we see from Cusco's example. And, spoiler alert, Yasma in her cat form. No other animals throughout the series speak human, so that means the fly was once a human, and sadly they got devoured by the spider. Ugh, that's one dark detail.
Hey, I've been turned into a cow. Can I go home?
Toy Story. Some fan theories celebrate the antagonists, like this pro-Sid theory of Toy Story. Let's retrace. We see Sid playing roughly with the toys throughout the movie.
Where are your rebel friends now?
And at the end, they tackle him.
So play nice.
Obviously, Sid realizes then his toys are alive.
The toys are alive!
15 years later in Toy Story 3, we see Sid working as a garbage man. To us, it's supposed to be a punishment, but is it? One fan has connected the dots. Accordingly, Sid was horrified after finding out toys were real, and realizing he'd been hurting them, he changed for the better. He starts working as a garbage man, so he can collect discarded toys and fix them, knowing they're alive. He also never told anybody about the toys, which reinforces his interesting redemption arc. ATLA. Any ATLA will confirm the one big point in the series was the tragic end of Katara and Sokka's mother.
Just let her go, and I'll give you the information you want.
A tragedy that prompted several heartfelt moments and bittersweet memories. And one fan theory suggests the Fire Nation ended their mother's life because of Hama, the inventor of bloodbending. Although we learn about Hama quite later, it's obvious she was able to escape because of her unique bending. So her captives, or the Fire Nation, were aware of her skill.
Past years developing the skills that would lead to my escape.
When the Fire Nation raided the Water Tribe, they didn't leave behind survivors because they didn't want another Hama incident and wanted to ensure their own survival. Considering Katara later learns bloodbending herself, it proves the Fire Nation was right about anyone learning the technique. So their action, though devastating, made sense. Sleeping Beauty. Growing up, you realize the Sleeping Beauty was pretty messed up, but the story is much darker than you realized. Based on the writing of Giambattista Basile, an Italian poet, the origin features Talia, who falls into a deep slumber. After experiencing a tale of events exactly like Disney's Aurora's, everything changes after this. A king stumbles upon the sleeping princess and takes advantage of her, leaving her be. She only awakens after birthing twins. Hold on, it gets darker. The king finds out about Talia and his kids, but he's married, so he leaves his wife for the princess. But the previous queen is bitter about it and tries to take the twins' lives, but fails. The king finds out and executes her, spending the rest of his life with Talia. Tom and Jerry. Sometimes cartoons and movies put out stories that are glaringly obvious, and you only realize when you grow up. This classic cartoon is everyone's favorite, but it had some serious episodes. The most serious one was when Tom experiences heartbreak in Blue Cat Blues. Tom falls for a white cat, buys her gifts, and even a ring. That's not all. The blue kitty even signed away his life in exchange for a ratty old car to please his girlfriend. But she leaves him for Butch, a richer cat. Jerry tries to cheer up Tom, but then he spots his own girlfriend driving off with another mouse. The episode ends with the depressed duo sitting on the railway tracks. We all know what that means, but only realized it years later. Peter Pan. Have you ever wondered why the boys in Neverland never grow up? Was it a magical barrier or something else? Well, there's a dark theory that suggests Peter Pan was evil all alone, and Captain Hook was the true hero. The movie is based on the book by J.M. Barrie, and one line reads, "Peter thins boys up when they begin to grow." Fans say this probably suggests Peter claims the lives of the Lost Boys who show signs of growing up, and Captain Hook and his crew are former Lost Boys who survived but are stuck on the island. This is why the duo clash so much, and why each side thinks they're right. Ugh, no wonder Disney changed the story.
Before we move any further, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you can keep watching our amazing content.
Winnie the Pooh. Perhaps the most popular theory is the one that suggests that all Winnie the Pooh characters symbolize mental illnesses. Now, this might sound crazy, but this theory becomes evident the more and more you watch the series. Pooh easily gets distracted and hyperfixates on things like honey. This behavior suggests Pooh has ADHD. The nervous twitch Piglet always gets is a symptom of generalized anxiety disorder.
Dear, I'm a goner. Ah!
Tigger is impulsive and also has ADHD.
Hey, look. What a strange-looking creature.
Looked like another Tigger to me.
Oh, no, it's not. I'm the only Tigger.
While Eeyore suffers from depression.
It's okay. I'll learn to live without it.
We see more evidence the deeper we go into the show. Al is smart but struggles sometimes, suggesting he has a learning disorder.
The thing to do is as follows. Forward to the... I beg your pardon?
Why, you sneezed just as you were going to tell me what the first thing to do was.
Rabbit possibly has a narcissistic personality combined with OCD.
You're to clean the closet. All you have to do is organize, sanitize, and alphabetize every single box.
And if Christopher Robin is envisioning this all, he possibly has schizophrenia. A bit too deep? Up. Some fan theories can make you cry. An imaginative movie, and one that gets us teary-eyed right in the beginning. Let's get to the scene where Carl is told he'd have to vacate the house.
Just to let you know, my boss will be happy to take this whole place off your hands.
According to fans, Carl passed away in his sleep after this. The entire fly a house with balloons idea is Carl's spirit trying to travel to the afterlife, but has trouble letting go of life. So Russell, a guardian angel, is sent to make the transition easier.
Ah!
Hi, Mr. Frederickson. It's me, Russell.
Russell is still a trainee, and all his badges mean he's been helping out other past souls. But he needs to guide Carl before he can get his wings. The original theory has more intricate details lining up with the movie. Moana. There are several theories about Moana. The most popular is how the protagonist wasn't alive for a major chunk of the movie.
Well, she's dead.
Fans theorize figures from Polynesian mythology were only accessible after one crosses a barrier into a magical other world, which can only be done if the character is deceased. We see Moana and her chicken driven by a storm, but fans theorize this is when they lose their life and transcend the barrier. Apart from the chicken and her grandma's spirit, all characters she meets are supposedly mythological. Another proof is how she doesn't feel physical pain, despite going through a lot. In the end, Moana and Hihi were brought back by Te Fiti so they could return to the human world. Minions.
King Bob!
A while ago, a dark theory about the beloved Minions movie went viral. According to this, the childhood classic was inspired by a Nazi experiment that went horribly back in 1944. The theory detailed how the Minions look eerily similar to metal helmets worn by unwilling participants in the experiment. But although the bug-eyed characters bear a resemblance to the supposed helmets, luckily this is one of the few movies that isn't as dark as you think. Movie makers have long rejected the idea, and a closer look at the horrifying masks has revealed they're just old diving suits. So, Disney didn't make a happy-go-lucky movie about a horrifying tragedy. Minions is an individual children's classic that became the target of coincidence. Pokemon. There are two popular fan theories about Pokemon, a timeless anime. One of them is a little depressing, while the other is just an interesting observation. Let's discuss the first one. If we remember correctly, Ash Ketchum got into a bike accident. Fans think he never recovered and instead fell into a coma, where he began dreaming up scenarios to compensate for things he can no longer do. This is evident from the behavior of Team Rocket, which gets friendlier as the season progresses. It also explains why Ash never ages. Another interesting theory states Ash isn't in a coma, but actually enjoying his life after coming across a Ho-Oh. For those who don't know, a Ho-Oh is a multicolored aviation Pokemon, which creates a rainbow when flying. However, this is a rare phenomenon, and only a few people have seen it, and those who have are granted an eternal wish. We see Ash witnessing the Ho-Oh. It's possible Ash never ages because his only wish was to forever be on a successful Pokemon journey, and seeing the Rainbow Trail unknowingly made his wish come true. Rapunzel. This classic was based on the Grimm brothers' stories. In the original, Rapunzel's parents regularly steal cabbage from a witch's garden. When the witch discovers their theft, she demands their firstborn as payback, forcing them to surrender. Similar to the Disney version, Rapunzel meets the prince, but in this not-so-child-friendly version becomes pregnant. The angry witch cuts off Rapunzel's hair, banishes her from the tower, and lures the prince to the tower before pushing him off. He survives, but is permanently blinded. The blind prince and Rapunzel spend months in the forest, where Rapunzel births twins. Miraculously, the two reunite, and Rapunzel's joyful tears restore his eyesight. As for the witch, she never receives any punishment. Pocahontas. For kids, Pocahontas was about bridging the divide between English settlers and the Native American tribes. But when you grow up and watch it, boy is it a mess. Not many know this movie is based on a real historical figure, possibly named Matatoka, and her experience is earth-shattering. The real Pocahontas wasn't in her 20s, but a child, and John Smith wasn't the charming hero we think. The real man intimidated the villagers and often forcefully took their food. After her marriage to a fellow tribesman, Mataka was enslaved. Her child was forcefully taken from her, and the colonists even took her husband's life. They then took her to England, where she converted to Christianity and reportedly birthed a son, but was never heard from ever again. Oof! Chicken Run. Was it just me, or was everyone terrified of this movie? Seeing all those chickens try their best to give eggs and being turned into apple pie if they didn't was definitely a terrifying aspect. Well, when you grow up, you realize the movie symbolizes more than just good humor and friendship. The chickens are forced to live in a cage-like coop, like we do in a society, and are forced to morph to Tweety's idea of good living. Whenever they fail, the chickens are turned into pie, an obvious punishment for not following the rules. That's weird. It's like the chickens were being exploited by a group of people that controlled a major part of their earnings, or eggs. It's oddly familiar, don't you think? Rugrats. Some theories, although a little crazy, make sense, like the one that claims the Rugrats are just a figment of Angelica's imagination. According to this theory, the rest of the babies have passed away, but because Angelica grew up listening to them, she imagines them alive. Theorists claim Chucky and his mother passed away, leaving Jas a nervous wreck. Tommy passed away as soon as he was born, so his father's unusual antics are just a coping mechanism.
I've lost control of my life.
The DeVille's twins never existed. This is why Angelica seems to be the only one who's really in touch with the adults, despite the rest of the kids getting a few cuddles here and there. Do you believe this theory? Anastasia. We're big on family reunions, especially when it's a lost Disney princess finally getting home. But Disney's beloved Anastasia had a far different ending than her real-life version. Disney's Anastasia begins with an accurate depiction of her character, the daughter of Tsar Nicholas II and connected to the Russian Revolution, but that's where the similarities end. The real Anastasia didn't get amnesia in a heartfelt reunion with her grandmother. Instead, she and her family were placed on house arrest and were held captive during the First World War. The entire Tsar family was executed during the Civil War. Oh, no wonder Disney brushed the real story under the rugs. My Neighbor Totoro. This movie already made me cry, but after I found out the depressing truth behind this movie, let's just say even an onion can't bring that many sniffles. Accordingly, the gentle supernatural creature Totoro is actually an angel that collects the soul of the deceased. He's only visible when the seer is about to depart life. Considering Mei was the first to spot Totoro,
Totoro?
many believe she may have passed when the audience thinks she disappeared. Her sister Setsuki only sees Totoro and later sacrifices her life to rejoin her sister in the afterlife. Their sick mother later sees a glimpse of Totoro, indicating that she too will pass away. Their reunion at the end is simply their souls reconciling. Oh, my poor heart! Finding Nemo. Remember when the barracuda attacks Marlin's family, leaving behind just one egg, which later turns into Nemo? Some fans theorize there was no single egg. Apparently, Marlin lost his entire family to the barracuda, but he's unable to cope with the loss, so his brain conjures up a survivor and calls it Nemo. We even see him go through the 5 stages of denial. Denial, when he can't decide if Nemo's school is safe.
Come on, Nemo!
Oh, you better stay with me.
Anger, when he scolds Nemo. He bargains when he chooses Dory as a travel partner.
I have to find the boat.
I've seen a boat.
You have?
Uh-huh. This way, follow me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
He experiences despair as a dentist.
Nemo.
And acceptance? That's when he lets go.
It's time to let go!
Think I'm still kidding? Do you know what Nemo means in Latin? No one. Coincidence? I think not. Harry Potter. Fancy taking a trip to Hogwarts with me? Only it doesn't exist. I know. You're probably saying, silly, we all know it's fake. That's not what I mean. Fans claimed Harry had simply imagined the whole magical world to make himself feel better. And you know, this is one of the few Harry Potter series that J.K. Rowling didn't shoot down. Fans theorized Harry was understandably traumatized from being forced to live under the stairs, and his stay with hateful relatives made it worse. This all prompted his mind to conjure up a world that allowed him to escape the brutalities of life. I'll be right back. I just need to drain my tears into this bucket. Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch don't have a dark background, just a dark theme you only get later in life. Lilo and Nanny lost their parents, and being the only surviving adult, Nanny steps up to take care of Lilo. Of course, this doesn't go too smoothly. Lilo is fussy and understandably grieving, and Nanny is trying her best to steer through it.
I'm calling in exterminators to take care of this bug problem once and for all.
She even gets visits from Disney's version of CPS. But most of their visits are ruined by Stitch. Think about it, having to prove to a social organization you deserve to raise your sibling, but every visit is thwarted by something, would naturally make anyone almost give up.
You have 3 days to change my mind.
It all becomes serious when you realize this is a thing that happens to people in real life. Madeline, Lost in Paris. This nostalgic movie is one of those that makes you feel horrible as an adult, mainly because you can finally put 2 and 2 together. While we remember Madeline, Lost in Paris as a lighthearted movie, as an adult you spot several red flags. Not only did the orphanage let Madeline go with a complete stranger claiming to be her relative, which we all know was a lie,
It is criminal.
the movie also shows the darkest side of life, child labor. The kidnapped orphan girls are forced to work and slave off all day in exchange for minimal food and water. If that wasn't dark enough, it also shows scenes of harm and how easy it is to become a victim of such schemes. A Bug's Life. Some movies are so glaringly obvious, they'll throw out details right in front of your eyes, and it won't click until you're an adult. A Bug's Life was such a movie.
You piece of dirt.
As a kid, I thought it was all about the ants taking back their colony and retaliating against the grasshoppers. But as an adult, if you think about it, the movie details how a particular group of people sieges smaller colonies through fear and intimidation. Even if you overlook this viewpoint, the movie shows how rich people get richer by taking what's not theirs and leaving behind just morsels for the poor.
The sun grows the food, the ants pick the food, the grasshoppers eat the food.
It also shows how some people in power don't care about what they're doing. Ed, Edd, and Eddy. As a kid, I couldn't believe how the kids in Ed, Edd, and Eddy could do anything they wanted. As an adult, I can't believe the kids had to go through such times. The show is clearly about child neglect. When they're not eating jawbreakers and coming up with fun schemes, each of the boys is hiding a dark truth. Siblings Ed and Sarah are clearly golden child and family scapegoat.
Edward, how many times have I told you to be nice to your baby sister?
Ed's family constantly favors Sarah and ignores Ed to the point of even taking away his stair privileges.
What happened to the stairs? My parents took them down because I am grounded.
Double D is a gifted child who's been left to his own devices because his parents feel they've done enough.
Dearest mother and father, it is with great shame.
As for Eddie, he's just a kid trying to impress his family, but failing at every step.
I thought you wanted to hang with your hero. I do, bro, I do!
Ouch! Powerpuff Girls. Kid shows. There's no way they could be hiding some weird backstory, right? Some fans theorize this lovable show is a desperate man's coma-induced dream. Confused? Allow me to elaborate. The show makes it wildly obvious Professor Utonium created the Powerpuff Girls as his own, but some fans theorize they didn't actually exist. According to these fans, the professor is unable to have kids, and in a wild attempt, experiments on himself with dangerous chemicals. The professor falls sick because of the side effects and goes into a coma. The rest of the show is just a happy dream the professor's mind has concocted, which explains why he remains single throughout the show. This is a wild take. Do you believe it?
This is the best gift ever, Dad.
Fairly Odd Parents. Wasn't it a dream to get anything you could ever wish for?
Finally! Every 10-year-old's dream! A room full of supermodels!
Fairly Odd Parents, a show that made us kids envious of everything. Well, one fan theory suggests that Timmy's world, full of magical wishes and everything he could ever ask for, is actually his imagination. We all know Timmy's parents ignore him, and the most times they appear are to scold him. Fans believe Timmy created the world as a coping mechanism to deal with the neglect he suffers at home. This is also why he doesn't age. And yes, there is an episode about Timmy wishing to remain the same forever.
I secretly wish that everyone would stop aging so that I could stay 10 years old and keep my fairies forever.
But here, this wish is a result of him never wanting to go back to the real world, his parents. Lady and the Tramp. A classical film that's loved by everyone, but especially dog lovers. Lady and the Tramp is a fun trip down memory lane. But while we're remembering all the sweet moments, rewatching the film isn't all that fun. Why? Mainly because while the movie is kid-friendly, it had some ideas that weren't that good. The biggest was the Siamese cats, Si and Am, which were accentuated with slit-shaped eyes. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, right? Except they were portrayed as the villains. So the movie indirectly promoted the idea that Asians are evil. Johnny Bravo. Back in our days, anything that popped up as a cartoon was pretty much safe. It's only years later you realize how messed up they were. Don't get me wrong, I love Johnny Bravo. His slickly styled hair, unique bravado, and relationship with his mother were all amazing to watch back then. But as an adult, you can't deny the show is problematic. Johnny spends almost every day chasing women and refuses to back down after the women blatantly shoot him down. In some episodes, his pursuit intensifies after being told no. Considering the show ignores the importance of consent, it's pretty shocking to see it went on for as long as it did. The Flintstones. A wild theory about the Flintstones suggests they aren't living in the past, but actually in the future. Fans believe the Flintstones are living on the remains of the post-apocalyptic Earth, and the handful of characters in the show are the few survivors. But that's not the only twist. Remember that crossover episode with the Jetsons? Fans think it's not an imaginative time travel, but believe the two families are living in the same era.
I hope that's not the way our descendants are gonna look.
According to this theory, some global catastrophe destroyed the Earth. But just before this happened, a handful of upper-class families moved to the upper atmosphere, including the Jetsons. So, when the Jetsons meet the Flintstones, they didn't travel to the past, but simply descended on Earth, which had been transformed into its past self. Peanuts! We all adored the lovable, round-headed protagonist of Peanuts. Charlie Brown's optimism and determination made him an excellent main character for a kid's show. But one dark theory explains his behavior in an unexpected way. This popular theory suggests Charlie Brown is a patient with terminal cancer, the biggest evidence being his lack of hair and general frailty. But physical appearances aside, there are other moments in the show that point this out too. Although Charlie remains optimistic, he frequently experiences sadness, and often one that invokes questions about life. This may be because he's sick all the time, or is aware he's running out of time, so he can't help but feel sad. The Parent Trap. Buckle up, because this movie is a wild ride containing inappropriate concepts and a message that doesn't sit well with today's audience. Firstly, we have twins who were separated from a young age, not by some evil witch or a catastrophe, but by their own parents. What kind of parents willingly separate siblings? Awful kind, let me tell you. Then we realized the parents were never going to discuss the other twin, so the girls would have grown up thinking they were an only child. But that's not all. The mother and father are extremely rich, suggesting both planned on only their select twin getting their inheritance. And then the film pits one woman against another over a man. In my opinion, all of them need therapy. Thank you very much for watching the video. Do like and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to not miss any of the upcoming amazing videos. Thank you once again.